Ethan Walker had never really forgotten Jason Carter. Even years after high school, the memory of being shoved into lockers, of whispered jokes at his expense, lingered in quiet corners of his mind. But life had moved on, and Ethan had built something for himself. A small apartment in the city, a job he enjoyed at a local bookstore, and a steady relationship with Adam Brooks, who, for the most part, understood Ethan's sensitive nature. Adam had been a comforting presence, though recently he seemed distant, absorbed in work, leaving Ethan to navigate feelings of loneliness he hadn't felt in years. It was at a community fundraiser, a casual neighborhood event, where the past and present collided unexpectedly. Ethan had wandered between tables of handmade crafts and local food stalls, trying to shake off the stress of the week. That was when he saw Jason. The sight made him pause. Jason had changed, or at least he looked different. His athletic posture remained, but his expression was softer, more tentative. Gone was the smirk that had haunted Ethan through high school. In its place was something unfamiliar, a vulnerability that seemed almost hesitant. Jason spotted him too, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. Ethan's stomach twisted in a way that surprised him. This was a boy who had caused him so much silent pain, now standing before him, clearly aware of his presence and seemingly cautious. Ethan? Jason's voice was quieter than Ethan remembered, careful, almost questioning. Jason. Ethan replied, unsure what else to say. He wanted to turn away, to avoid reopening old wounds, yet there was something in Jason's demeanor that kept him rooted in place. They exchanged small talk at first, awkward at times, but gradually the conversation deepened. Jason admitted that he reflected a lot on his past behavior, that he had been immature and cruel. Ethan listened, a swirl of feelings rising in him. Resentment, curiosity, even a flicker of something he could not quite name. There was sincerity in Jason's words, and as much as Ethan wanted to reject it, part of him felt drawn to this changed person. You know, Jason said, pausing as he looked around the crowded area, I've thought about reaching out for years, but I wasn't sure you'd even want to see me. There was a vulnerability in his tone that Ethan had not expected. It wasn't begging or pleading. It was quiet honesty. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He wasn't sure what he wanted. Part of him remembered the pain vividly, the humiliation, the loneliness of being targeted. Another part, however, recognized the effort Jason had clearly made to grow, to be different. He found himself softening, despite the guard he had built around his heart. Jason smiled faintly, almost nervously. I'd like to talk sometime. Just as friends, if that's possible. I know I can't undo the past, but maybe I could be someone you can trust now. He handed Ethan a small card with his number, tucking it into Ethan's hand with a casual, yet careful gesture. Ethan took the card, fingers brushing briefly, and the contact sent a strange warmth up his arm. He felt conflicted immediately. Adam was waiting back at the apartment, the person who had been his steady anchor for months, even if lately he had been distant. But here was Jason, someone from his past who had once caused so much pain, now extending a bridge he wasn't sure he was ready to cross. He tucked the card into his pocket, careful not to let Adam see it. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Ethan smiled and laughed with other neighbors, but his mind kept drifting back to the encounter. Questions bubbled up unbidden. Had Jason really changed? Was it possible to forgive someone who had hurt him so deeply? And, more unsettlingly, why did he feel a flutter of something he hadn't felt in years? Back home, Adam greeted him with a tired smile and a brief hug. How was the event? He asked, glancing at Ethan from behind his laptop screen. Ethan shrugged, forcing a casual grin. It was good. Busy, lots of people. But inside, his thoughts were a mess. Jason's words, his tentative smile, the card still in Ethan's pocket. It all lingered, pressing against his mind. Ethan lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Jason, not the boy who had bullied him, but the man who now seemed to carry a quiet remorse, someone who was asking, in his own cautious way, for a chance at friendship. Ethan knew he was walking a fine line in his thoughts. He cared about Adam, yet he couldn't deny the strange pull toward Jason, the curiosity and the unresolved emotions of the past. It was a complicated knot, one he wasn't sure how to untangle. By the time he finally drifted asleep, Ethan had made a small, secret decision. He would keep the card, and perhaps, when the time was right, he would call. Not for anything more than conversation, he told himself. But even as he made that promise, a flicker of anticipation and something unspoken settled in his chest, a warning and a temptation, both at once. Ethan hadn't intended to reach out to Jason so soon, but a quiet evening alone, with Adam working late again, had nudged him to take a small, cautious step. He texted, keeping it casual, "Hey, just wanted to say it was good seeing you. Hope you're doing well." Within minutes, a reply came. "Yeah, it was really nice seeing you too. Would love to catch up sometime, maybe coffee." Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Coffee seemed harmless. It was just a friendly gesture, right? Still, a flutter of nervous anticipation rose in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. They met the next afternoon at a quiet cafe downtown. Jason arrived with a polite smile, dressed casually but neatly. He greeted Ethan with a slight nod, careful not to overstep boundaries. The conversation began lightly. Books, work, small-town memories. But it didn't take long for it to drift into deeper territory. Jason asked about Ethan's life, his feelings, and his relationship with Adam. Ethan found himself talking about things he hadn't shared in months, frustrations he had tucked away. Jason listened attentively, without judgment, just an open presence that made Ethan feel heard in a way he hadn't realized he was craving. Adam, meanwhile, was still preoccupied with work. He answered texts slowly, skipped a few calls, and seemed distracted when they did manage to talk. Ethan didn't blame him. Adam had always been ambitious, and he had been under pressure lately. Still, the contrast between Adam's distracted responses and Jason's attentive, patient listening created a tension Ethan couldn't ignore. He felt a warmth with Jason that Adam hadn't offered in weeks, and it stirred feelings Ethan wasn't sure he should be experiencing. Over the following days, their conversations became more frequent. They texted about mundane things, favorite songs, shared memories, books they'd read, but underlying all was a subtle, unspoken closeness. Ethan found himself laughing more than he had in months, enjoying someone's full attention in a way that felt new and exciting. Each message from Jason carried a softness, a genuine curiosity about Ethan's thoughts and feelings. Ethan realized he was looking forward to these exchanges in a way he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't physical. It was emotional, yet it felt almost as intense, a quiet pull he struggled to define. One evening, Jason suggested a walk through the park. The city streets had quieted down, and the air held the faint scent of autumn leaves. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. As they walked side by side, the conversation turned personal. Jason shared his reflections on high school, admitting how immature and hurtful he had been, and how he regretted it. Ethan shared pieces of himself, too. The insecurities, the lonely moments, the frustration with Adam's emotional distance. They didn't touch, didn't cross any physical boundaries, yet the emotional intensity grew with every step. At one point, Jason stopped and looked at Ethan. "I know I can't change the past, Ethan," he said quietly. "But I want to be someone you can rely on now. I want to be better." Ethan's chest tightened. It wasn't a confession of love, but it carried weight. It carried the possibility of something new, something nurturing that contrasted with the strain in his current relationship. He felt a confusing mixture of relief and guilt, warmth and hesitation. By the time they returned to their starting point, the sun was low, casting long shadows over the path. Ethan's thoughts swirled. He liked Adam, and he knew Adam cared for him. But Adam's recent emotional withdrawal had left cracks that Jason's presence now seemed to fill. It was subtle, mostly unspoken, but undeniable. He was forming a bond with Jason that was crossing a line he had promised he wouldn't even approach. He felt a rush of excitement and fear at the same time. That night, Ethan found himself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the text, the walk, the conversation. He thought about Adam's exhaustion and distance, and Jason's attentiveness and understanding. He realized he'd saved Jason's number under a nickname that only he would recognize, a small act of secrecy. It was harmless, he told himself, just a friend. Yet even as he said it, he knew the truth. Emotionally, he had already crossed a line. The pull toward Jason was no longer just curiosity. It had become an emotional tether, a connection that left him both exhilarated and uneasy. As sleep finally claimed him, Ethan understood something about his own heart. Sometimes, what you crave most isn't what you should have. And yet, he also couldn't deny that Jason, the boy who had once hurt him, was now offering him something that felt like understanding, warmth, and even hope. Ethan woke to another quiet morning. Adam had left early for work again, offering a brief, distracted kiss on the cheek. Ethan watched him go, feeling a familiar pang of distance that had grown between them over the past few weeks. The texts from Jason were already waiting on his phone, gentle and patient as always. Part of Ethan wanted to ignore them, to focus on his long-term relationship with Adam. But the other part of him, the part that had been neglected, unseen, and quietly yearning, couldn't resist reading Jason's messages. They were comforting, kind, and attentive in a way that made Ethan's chest ache with longing. By mid-morning, Ethan's phone buzzed with a call from Adam. He answered hesitantly. "Hey, everything okay?" Adam's voice carried a hint of fatigue and tension. Ethan swallowed, realizing the moment had come to confront what he had been avoiding. "Adam, we need to talk," he said quietly. Adam's pause on the other end of the line was long enough to make Ethan's stomach twist. "Sure, what about?" Adam asked, though his voice betrayed the awareness that something was wrong. Ethan exhaled slowly, trying to steady his racing thoughts. I feel distant from you. I feel like I'm missing you, and I don't know how to fix it." There was silence. Then Adam admitted, his voice low, "I know I've been distant. Work has been overwhelming, and I didn't realize how much it was affecting us. I didn't mean to make you feel alone." Ethan felt the honesty in Adam's words, but also a complicated swirl of guilt and relief. It was a start, a step toward bridging the distance, but it wasn't the only truth he carried. Ethan hesitated, his fingers hovering over the phone as Jason's name flashed on the screen with a new message. "Hey, just checking in. Everything okay?" Adam noticed it, a frown creasing his forehead. "Who's that?" he asked cautiously. Ethan's heart pounded. This was the moment he had been dreading. "It's someone from the past. A friend," he admitted. "We've been talking." Adam's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in concern. "Ethan, is there more to it than that?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I've formed an emotional connection. It's complicated. I didn't plan for it, and I don't want to hurt you, but I have to be honest." Adam was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, softer this time. "I should have noticed. Ethan, I should have been more present. Maybe I pushed you away without realizing it. But thank you for telling me." Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't expected such understanding. It didn't erase the tension, but offered chance for something better. Communication, honesty, and reflection. Later that afternoon, Ethan decided to step outside and clear his mind. He walked to the quiet park where he and Jason had shared their earlier conversation. Jason was already there, leaning against a tree, looking both hopeful and uncertain. "Ethan," Jason greeted softly, "I wasn't sure you'd come." Ethan shook his head. "I had to. I needed to think." They sat on a nearby bench, the city sounds fading into the background. Jason spoke first, his voice measured. "I care about you, Ethan, more than I expected. But I don't want to be the reason you hurt someone you care about. I want you to make the choice that feels right for your heart." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. It was tempting, incredibly tempting, to allow himself to lean on Jason completely. But he also realized that Adam had shown vulnerability, honesty, and willingness to reconnect. The heart isn't always clear-cut, but it responds to truth. "I can't ignore what I feel, Jason," Ethan said quietly. "You've shown me understanding and patience. But I also have to face the reality of my relationship, and I have to decide what aligns with my values and commitments." Jason nodded, a small, respectful smile crossing his face. "Whatever you choose, I want you to be happy, and to know that you're allowed to put yourself first without guilt." Ethan stood, taking a deep breath. He had clarity now. He would return home, talk with Adam, and work through the cracks in their relationship. Jason had been a mirror, showing him emotional needs he hadn't recognized, but the choice was about rebuilding what was already meaningful. As he walked away, He felt a mix of gratitude and closure. Jason had reached for his heart, yes, but Ethan had the power to decide where it belonged. By the time he returned to his apartment, Adam was waiting, a hopeful expression on his face. They sat together, and for the first time in weeks, they talked, not just about feelings, but about needs, boundaries, and how to nurture their connection. The past and the near mistakes of the heart had taught Ethan something essential. Love isn't only about attraction or comfort. It's about honesty, patience, and the courage to face emotional truths, even when they are uncomfortable. And sometimes, the person who once hurt you can help you discover the strength to choose wisely. Ethan leaned back, feeling the tension finally ease. He realized that the heart is complicated, but it also has a remarkable way of guiding you to what matters most: trust, respect, and the relationships we're fighting for.